Hello, and welcome to Horizons. So Q4 Horizons 2025 is going to be a big one. So just as a reminder for everyone what Horizons actually is, and the whole point of this whole thing is that we want to make a fundamental difference to drive advertising forward for the best. And what we want to do is actually share some of the learnings of what's going to happen over the next 12 to 18 months. We can actually make that difference. We can introduce ourselves, shall I? Go and go for it.
I'm Lindsay.
I'm David. Right, no, that's out of the way. Yeah, so it's all about brand you. So hopefully at the end of Horizons today, you'll learn a lot more stuff. You might want lots more questions, go and do your own research, but really, how can you be the smartest person in the room? And actually, this is all part of our effort to make advertising a lot better. You can see that we're still in our no expenses spared studio, which is amazing. I'm wearing Pocket Square because, smart, cash, but it's good. I'm off to the IAs, the International Advertising Association, because I'm Trade International. So that's what I'm off to after this. That's why I'm very smart today. So let's kick into the first slide. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick off with a bit of a recap. So a couple of things we talked about in September is we had quite a lot of talking about Performance Max, and a lot of people we saw on the poll, because that was the poll question, wanted to know more about Performance Max. So if you would like us to send you the write-ups that we've done since they're on PMax, let us know. We can ping that over. We've also been pushing out on our WhatsApp channel. If you're not on our WhatsApp channel, there's a QR code at the end to be on our WhatsApp channel. The other thing that we also did at the end of the last Horizons was, obviously, we always talk about AI nowadays. So it's like, are people AI ready? Is there anything that you want to know more about AI? And that was very much everyone wanted to know more about AI and the practical uses of AI. So we actually ran an event 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Actionable AI, which was really, really good. Lots of people came down to that. If you didn't come to that and you want to see the write-up of that, again, click the poll to say you want it and we will ping that over. Later today. So that's mostly the recap from September. So let's kick on to say what we're actually going to be talking about today. So on today's agenda, we have YouTube. So YouTube's actually quite cool. We've got a few things to say about YouTube, so we'll probably spend some time on that. Synthetic audiences. I don't know if anybody's heard of synthetic audiences, but actually they're just really quite funny and massively you should get involved in this because it's brilliant. So we're going to go into that. Then we're going to talk about AI wars because AI, why not? And it's good to talk about AI and the dawning of kind of a potential two-tiered internet, which would be quite interesting. And then finally, traditional media is making a real comeback. And there's some big changes that happen in traditional, whether it's TV and out of home, that everyone should be aware of because it's opening the doors of traditional media above the line to all advertisers, regardless of size. So let's dive in. YouTube. One of the things that is in beta at the moment that's probably going to be rolled out in the next 6 months or so, which I think is really, really interesting, is the YouTube Brand Pulse Report. So what that means is that across the whole of YouTube, what we'll be able to report back on is how many people are mentioning your brand. So it actually, obviously, voice recognition, it actually understands what people are saying, and obviously you've got the caption, so it understands how many people are talking about your brand. That could be influencers, it could be user-generated content, it could be yourself, it could be all of the organic stuff as well as the paid side of things as well. So it actually picks up all your brand mentions. And interestingly enough, through the wonderful use of AI models and things like that, is that it actually picks up whether people are actually showing your brand, your logos and things like that as well. So it's actually a really interesting one that hopefully in probably 6 to 12 months, we can actually start reporting on brand health about how many people are outside of your page that you wouldn't normally be able to report on, to see actually if we're doing big out of home, big TV or other kind of digital activity, are more people talking about your brand now or across YouTube, which should be quite cool, right?
I mean, YouTube is quite an interesting area as well because there's been lots, obviously, going on in the connected TV space and everything and all that development. But actually, there's been quite a few releases in the YouTube kind of product over the last kind of quarter and kind of coming as well. So even things like being able to track the search uplift from people who have seen your YouTube advertising, that's in pilot at the moment, so just in a few places. But that's going to be really great because we had I think we might have talked about this before about how YouTube had just screwed everything up by deleting YouTube as an option.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 of these ago.
Yeah, 2 of them. Yeah.
So they seem to have now sorted themselves out, and they've now released a very exciting product called Optimizing to Views, which is what they had before. Yeah. So that's good. But it is going to be quite good if they can actually now start also reporting on the lift in brand searches, because that's something that we've been talking about for a long time, obviously, as a really great signal of actual kind of growth in interest. Well, the other thing with YouTube, which I keep banging on about quite a lot in the last few weeks and so is YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts is huge and something that kind of gets ignored quite a bit when we're thinking about kind of what type of creative to create. And I think that's probably because of the connected TV side of it, that we've all been kind of focusing on actually that YouTube was a really great opportunity to get onto TV screens. But actually YouTube Shorts is massive, and particularly for that kind of like more valuable audience for a lot of our kind of clients, really in that kind of 25 to 45-year-old bracket. It's bigger than TikTok. It's actually bigger than Reels. But we don't often look at like what type of content should go into there. So I think that's going to be really exciting, is actually kind of looking at leaning that and moving some of the spend into that platform over kind of thinking that TikTok and Instagram is where we have to be.
Which is interesting, right? Because YouTube's been around probably for such a long time that it's kind of almost taken for granted to a degree.
Yeah, exactly.
And TikTok was a new thing that everyone needs to jump on. Obviously, Reels and things like that. And because it's meta, you have to get involved. But yeah, YouTube's huge and optimized into the big screen in the living room as well.
Yeah. And I think like with things like PMax, obviously being, and demand gen, where it's like you can do everything together. But we all see it with the data that you can now get from PMax, which we definitely talked about last time, that you can start seeing like which areas of the Google stack you're appearing on. And YouTube is part of it, but it's mostly search. So it does mean that you're kind of losing a bit more of that exposure in what is actually a really key social environment, content environment. And then brand safety is obviously a part of it. That's always something that we've had as a concern for YouTube, particularly like some of the content on there, you kind of need to protect. So using tech to help protect you from that is quite important. But you haven't got the same issues so much in the comments and the moderation side within YouTube, which is becoming more and more of an issue on things like Meta and TikTok.
Yeah. So I guess from a YouTube point of view, there's huge amounts. So there's a lot of work Google have done, right, over the last 18 months to kind of open up PMax, open up YouTube. And I think the brand pulse report should be quite good. Again, from that kind of research point of like, what are our audience doing? Where are they talking about our brands and things like that? Another brilliant part of research, if we go on to the next slide, is synthetic audiences. So let me describe synthetic audiences. This is Elizabeth, by the way. Elizabeth will say her piece shortly. So synthetic audiences, for those that don't know, is essentially what we've done internally at Altair, is that we had a conversation like probably only about a month or so ago, so not particularly long ago, where we realized actually we've got 5 years worth of culture, entertainment data from all of our kind of commissioned surveys that we do internally, and tourism. Yeah. And the good thing about it is that tourism bit, it's not only people coming into London, it's actually how they kind of travel around the UK and what they're doing and where they're coming in from as well. So we've got 5 years worth of this kind of actual motivations and interest data and really kind of qualitative data. So we thought, actually, I wonder if there's a way that we could essentially build our own AI system around that so it could actually answer questions to drill into that data. So, and then we've kind of taken it further, actually, where we're actually manipulating the LLM to actually create an actual real person, which we'll get onto in a sec with Elizabeth, which is fueled by our own data. And I think that's really important because if you were at the Actionable AI, you would have seen
First Look
Helen Parker. So because we've got multiple of these. So for example, Elizabeth is based in Harrogate. Helen is from Cobham. We've got people dotted around the UK that are built for these synthetic audiences. So we've essentially got a focus group where we internally can go and ask questions of Elizabeth, Terry, or even Helen, lots and lots of questions, and really kind of stress test the creative, stress test our strategy, our plans, and our approach, and things like that. And it's been really, really interesting. And I think the fact that it's based on actual quantitative and qualitative real people data, I think is really, really important.
It's been really helpful, actually. I think it's about how easy it makes it to interpret the data. So knowing that the information behind it is from real humans and that you can actually just ask questions for it, and then it kind of expands on that, makes it a much, much easier than looking at charts and then making your own assumptions. So hearing the voice of the people who have actually filled in those surveys and answered it makes it bring it to life a lot more and help spark kind of creative things, and that actually then helps you ask other questions of it that we didn't ask in the survey. So the ways that we've been using it so far has been really interesting, where we're kind of expanding the depth of questions we're asking. So I think we talked about this at Inspires, but even looking at things like asking Helen about her favourite campaigns in a certain sector, and she obviously then is able to kind of look across the internet and look at current campaigns in a certain sector and give us an opinion from her perspective, and that then comes from the motivations that we've kind of collected from real people. So it's really interesting how you can expand out from that.
Yeah, and before we go into detail, let's so the question is in the top left hand. This is what we actually asked Elizabeth. So if we go to the next bit where Elizabeth talks, and we'll see what she says about this question.
For me, it's the feeling of connection and discovery that makes a live cultural experience worth leaving home for. The chance to learn something new, share it with others, and be part of something meaningful in the moment. According to the survey, people my age are driven by learning, inspiration, relaxation, and social connection, which rings true. I can read or stream culture online anytime, but being in a gallery or theatre, seeing the artistry up close, feeling the atmosphere and talking about it afterwards brings a richness and emotional lift that you simply can't recreate at home.
The interesting thing about that is, as I said, it's built on actual real people data. And the whole idea of how everything we do with AI at Altair is that the human has to start the process. The AI makes everything more efficient and quicker. But the human has to do that last mile. And I think with Elizabeth, this one's actually quite interesting because we're using this internally quite a lot. But one of the things we're looking at for our clients is actually what qualitative data can we do specific to that client? So each client, each brand will have their own focus group of their different personas and different audiences that's based on real world data, real people. And then we can build all this out and it'd be very specific. And because it is specific to that brand, we can actually use the brand's data to kind of fuel it a lot harder, actually. And everything about that was actually made by us, really. So that was so I think this is actually a really interesting space to start stress testing plans, stress testing creative as well, because we can upload creative and get views on it as well.
I think that's going to be quite exciting, getting that kind of initial feedback on, like, more the question being like, what do you take from this? What do you think this is telling you about a certain product or brand that we're telling you? So rather than saying, do you like it? Because that's obviously not going to be very useful, that it's getting those kind of initial kind of feedbacks from that audience on how they take it. I think the other thing that's quite interesting is that when we were kind of playing around with this, the comment of, God, it sounds like AI and the text, but actually that's exactly the point. We're not trying to, synthetic audiences aren't about creating like that deep fake type thing where you're pretending this is a human representation. This is actually just a better way of interpreting research that you've done and being able to make sure that you're kind of just bringing it to life a little bit more. This isn't about pretending that Elizabeth actually exists.
Well, and also I did spend about 3 hours making sure she said the word bath properly, or bath, and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of artisticness that goes into this. But I think the important thing about this is, obviously this is very kind of cultural heritagey type persona, but we see this working across all of our behaviour change stuff. So understanding what kind of motivates someone to not do their recycling because they live in a flat in North London, through to B2B. If we can get the qualitative data really driving into a particular, like, who's the influencer on a tech SaaS type project to purchase some software, through to the user, through to the actual finance people and things like that. So we're actually fueling it and having those different people. It actually would work across any different sector, because the whole point is it should be bespoke to that client. So I think this should be something that's really, really quite interesting, that people should be all over, because it just gives you another thing to actually, and a really fast way to stress test anything you're doing. So that's quite cool. Okay, so talking about AI, so this is the kind of two-tier war thing that we mentioned right at the beginning. And I think briefly to talk about this, I think the interesting thing about Amazon versus Perplexity. So what we've been talking about probably all year in all of our horizons this year is essentially, will there be a two-tier system? Because, like, from an SEO point of view, pre-AI, it's very much, you build an SEO kind of foundation of your site that's based on three things. You've got SEO, design, and user experience, those three things, because the whole idea of SEO is to get people to your site. Whereas actually what we're seeing now in 2 years' time, it's maybe not necessarily getting people to your site, because you might have your own AI assistant actually sending off to another site to do it. And that's something we talked about in February, actually having your own AI assistants. And that was what we saw as the future. Now, this is exactly that. So that's what we called in February. So essentially, Perplexity, the AI, obviously Perplexity, is allowing people to create their own AI assistants. And what's happened is, where Perplexity has been sending their bots to Amazon, Amazon has found out that actually they're not real people, they're actually bots. So where someone's gone in, right, I want to buy X, Y, and Z, Perplexity goes, yeah, got it, goes off to Amazon and purchase it. Amazon now got a major problem with that. So Amazon are now suing Perplexity because they haven't announced that they're AI. So you can see the problem for Amazon is when an AI goes to the site, it's got a laser focus. I want to buy this, and these are the specs I want to go and buy, and it goes and buys it, and that's that. There's no upsell, there's no cross-sell, there's maybe also or even selling specifically the Amazon product rather than the actual brand that you wanted. So all of these things is actually starting to surface of what we talked about in February, that actually you can have your own AI assistants. So is there going to be a two-tier system where you'll have a beautiful website for human interaction, but you've actually got another kind of more marketplace for the AIs where the AIs kind of talk to each other and kind of make that happen?
It's quite ironic though, isn't it? Because like that is basically what Amazon did when they first came out anyway, was became the shop front of the shops.
Yeah.
So that's just evolution, isn't it, of that? Someone else is becoming the shop front.
And they're not having it. They're suing
shop.
Perplexity for it.
It's not even Amazon's product anyway. So
yeah.
Why should they, like, it's not their place to be like suing, really. It should be the people who made the product, because they're having less, or maybe they're getting the control back now, actually, the people who made the product. So screw Amazon.
Absolutely. So I think there's quite a lot to look forward to in terms of how this is going to pan out in the next 12 months. But also from a client point of view, is that whether you're a B2B SaaS or whether you're a cultural institution somewhere in the world, it's actually having that understanding of like, how are you going to be visible for AI? And that is something we talked quite a lot in our Actionable AI event a couple of weeks ago. Again, if you wanted to write up, should have said on the poll. So that's going to be quite an interesting one.
I think it's going to be good, isn't it? Because like even in the B2B space, there are kind of specialist vertical search environments, like the tech kind of review sites and everything. But actually, it's like for them, this is going to be the next thing that's going to take that away, and how that commercial model is going to change. But having a place where it's a proper focused search for you is better for the customer. So it's going to be a good thing.
And it'd be interesting to see how the whole thing changes in terms of the first kind of foray into like research for whether it's a product or whether it's B2B or B2C, where it kind of comes through a Perplexity or a ChatGPT or a Gemini. And then also something we've been talking about for, 5 years or so, is that you then kind of go onto the social side of things, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever it would be, to kind of do more kind of research around that, looking for reviews and kind of first person kind of insights into that kind of product. And then what you'll end up finding is actually your website traffic maybe dropping through a floor, but actually the quality hopefully goes up. And you would assume that actually for the products that are winning on this, your brand searches will actually be picking all of this up, because you've done the AI research, you've done your social research, and then you go straight to Google for your brand search, and then you're in and you're kind of away, really.
And you'll probably get customers that maybe didn't convert before because they couldn't quite find easily the information. Because when you're writing content for a website, it's impossible to think of all the different variations of things. I mean, we always say it when you're looking even in search, like search queries, and the really weird and wonderful things that people are asking. Like, you can't predict all of that all the time, whereas actually this will enable that to be predicted for you. Even things like we do quite a lot of like the campaigns for access audiences within culture, and actually those are really specific questions that people need to ask for whatever the needs are for themselves. That's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the big things we talked about a couple of weeks ago in the Actionable AI thing, is that how you're going to be visible is the key thing. So it's not necessarily traffic. So I think I was looking across all of our clients, actually, like quite a range of B2B, behavior change, and also the culture and entertainment stuff, is that the traffic coming from the AI is really, 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 really low. You get more traffic from DuckDuckGo than you do from ChatGPT, for example, across most of our clients. Whereas actually it's the visibility that's the important bit, because that's where you're doing all the pre-research. So visibility, and we're doing lots of audits on that as well for our clients as well. So which is,
if we had a poll, we'd say if you want to do an audit on that, you could press the poll, but we don't.
No, we don't. So you just need to email us and give us loads of money and we'll go do it. Right. On that note. So this is going to take us quite a while. Andromeda. So for those who don't know, Andromeda is the new algorithmic update from Meta. This happened in October, at the end of October, so it's all very new. But it's not new for us, because I was looking back through our last Horizon September, and you said, and you can see this on our website, by the way, because there's an actual video proof of this, is that you were saying about actually the whole thing that Meta's trying to do is make you go broader audiences to get away from those niche audiences and actually putting more power into the creative. And that's essentially what Andromeda actually did at the end of October, is they've made that real kind of push that they don't want you targeting nano audiences, niche communities, or any of that type of thing. They want you to essentially go broader and rely on the AI and their algorithms to do the work, but giving them lots and lots of creative messages to do that. So if you're on our WhatsApp group, then you would have seen a couple of weeks ago, we wrote a big thing about Andromeda, about actually how it's a big brand lock-in, because more and more reliance and more data is flowing into Meta. You're handing over more kind of the creative and the brand tone over to Meta too. So we're actually getting locked into that. And I think that's a big, big risk for a lot of brands. So if you haven't read it, you should read it because it's brilliant. And it's on our WhatsApp channel, so you should be all over it. But actually, or am I being too dramatic saying it's an existential risk?
Yeah, I think
for
so.
all brands.
I think so.
Well, I'm right, or I'm too
I think
dramatic?
it's a bit dramatic.
Okay, fine.
I think, I mean, it's just the irony, isn't it? Because we've been talking about it this week with some clients about they want you to do all of that, but at the same time, they limit how many ads you can have. So you can't have more than 50 ads in an ad set, even if they're poor. So it's like you can't have an audience running for a long period of time because all the legacy ads take up your allowance. So when they say they want loads of ads, they don't mean they want you to create loads of ads. They mean they want lots of ad variations within the same ad. So enabling all of their AI functionality, which is just not something that has ever looked good or something that people want to do. So there's a real kind of conflict of them wanting to, they're removing the audiences, wanting to have lots of creative variation without actually allowing you to have creative variation at the same time. So it's definitely kind of like something's got to change there. And it might be that they'll change those limits of kind of ad variance at some point, which would be nice because that's what we kind of have to go to.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think they just really want you to lean into the AI and tick those boxes, which again is a massive risk for brands because essentially, if you go full on AI, the meta AI on your creative, then you will get those thousands of iterations and all of this kind of stuff happening in the background. But you get the kind of the really bad stuff. So Peppa Pig, for example, where we did that a while ago, and then they roll out these kind of default AI on things. And sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off. So do you tick, do you untick? And then you have to go and find it. None of this is announced, right? So I think from our point of view, from an agency point of view, it's easily quadrupled, if not more, the work and the resource that goes in. And client side, yeah, to like actually police what Meta are actually doing with your ads. They essentially just want you to give the credit card details and a URL and let them do the rest of it. So I think that's kind of, the risk, because if you think about it as a bell curve, the more you get AI to do it, all of the algorithms are working off the same data. So you end up in the center of the bell curve and you're not doing anything different. So a lot of the ads will end up looking the same, which is a bit of a risk as well.
There's some really interesting
beige
stuff that kind of came out as well, just in terms of that perception of as much as you can send out lots of ads, that doesn't mean that they're received by people. And that's a really good way of someone I saw kind of talking about it. It's a really interesting way of writing about it, because that creativity and like actually going back to the synthetic audiences, even when we're talking about testing creative, well, testing creative means that you're going to be doing something that should be resonating with people, creating a connection. Well, that's the whole point of people being able to receive it. If you're just spamming with 1,000 ads and spraying and praying, that's not going to create any kind of connection. So actually then it does really come back to the creative and the insight and understanding what's going to be the bit that makes you stand out, rather than just becoming meh and like clickbait, which is what the AI
that's the
essentially
problem,
does.
Right? So actually pushing into the AI side of things will probably get you some half decent numbers, right? The engagement, the likes and all of the rest of it, purely because the algorithm, as we know social media will is essentially optimized to the more shock tactics and the clickbaits and things like that, which means you've just released or let go of your brand tone, all of the control around that, right? This is like a big, big problem. Like if you think about the reliance of a lot of brands on Meta and how it's becoming more of a lock-in and they're kind of shutting all of this stuff down and locking more brands in, it's a proper risk to your brand identity, your brand performance and all of these things that I think actually understanding there are other channels out there and other ways that you could advertise. Because the other thing that we also looked at was on our WhatsApp channel, was just pump that out there.
You're going to have like bingo.
Yeah.
How many times can you mention it?
I know. It's going to be great. Tally it. So on that, it was actually talking about over Q4, especially in the run up to Christmas, is the fatigue around those kind of short ads. So we did talk about YouTube Shorts before, but it's important to say that has to be balanced with something actually with some more meaning. So actually the fatigue, and actually some brands go more kind of long form advertising and things like that. And it is genuinely, I think, quite interesting that Christmas is the only time of year where creative is allowed to be creative. The rest of the time you have to just churn it.
And people look out for it.
Yeah.
The YouTube Shorts thing is quite interesting, I think, as well, just in terms of like, I know that there's obviously like that kind of like spamming and like looking through things. I have the tracker thing that I can see what my son's looking at on his phone, and it is ridiculous how many videos he will scan through in the space of like 20 minutes. Like just that, like how quickly he'll make a decision of whether something's right for him or not, and kind of going through it. But it is from a brand safety point of view. I think there's definitely some things there. The other thing is all the deep fake stuff. Again, going back to that came out. Was that this week?
Yeah.
That came out?
Yeah, it's a Reuters investigation.
Meta are making more money than McDonald's on scams and
10%,
deep fake.
10% of Meta's ad revenue is coming through scam.
Yeah.
And the fines they
get...
know
about it.
Yeah, exactly. They know about it, but the fines that they get from it are a fraction of it. So there's no real incentive to stop them. They make more money in the UK from scam ads than the NHS put into mental health.
Yeah.
It's like massive, right?
And then once you start doing something that causes people to not trust it, I mean, how many times when you're looking at content on Instagram, which is real because it's maybe from like a few years ago, someone doing something really cool, and everyone's just like, this is AI, this is AI, this is AI. Like the lack of confidence in actually how much is real on those platforms and how much that's controlled and, them not really caring. Will that change how much people go to it? People are constantly talking about going back to reading real magazines and actually doing stuff that's a genuine,
tangible,
like rewarding behavior. And obviously advertisers' money will follow people ultimately. So it's kind of like they're almost like double whammying themselves.
Yeah. But I do think it's like the polls are live now, but I think that the polls actually are really quite an important thing it's a bravery thing, right? Because if you're a marketeer and you spend huge amounts of money in Meta, and then you're thinking, well, anytime I do programmatic display, need brand safety, I want to know what websites I'm on. There's like huge amounts of control we have on that. And we talked about YouTube. We have brand safety wrapped in YouTube as well to make sure that all of our brands are safe on YouTube. You don't do that on Meta, right? But everyone's happily piling loads and loads and loads of money. I mean, they won the IAB Gold Standard Award last year. And it's like, as I said, like 10% are like deep fake, Martin Lewis put all your money into this crypto farm over here type thing. That there seems to be this huge discrepancy that Meta's too big to be challenged. As I said, like a couple of horizons ago, give me your credit card details, give me your URL. That's where they want you to be. But actually, there's a big creative argument around this. You're going to let go of your brand and become very very beige, but you're actually going more clickbait because it's going to optimize to the engagement and the clicks. You've got the problem that actually are people going to start to come away from Instagrams and Metas in the future because it is becoming more AI-led and things like that and less tangible. So I think it's an important thing for marketers to actually start to think properly about in the next 3 to 6 months is that Meta is locking you in, and you're probably already locked in because you're already addicted to the likes, you're already addicted to the ROI and things like that, and they're marking their own homework on that as well, but no one kind of talks about that. So I think there needs to be a lot of thought and rebellion that goes into whether we want to do Meta and things like that.
And there are lots of other options. I think also the other thing that's interesting, which is really quite scary, is that Gen Alpha are 16 next year, and they are again going to disrupt things because they've had a very different tech kind of journey with everything, and that's going to start shifting things again. The way they use social media, then they're less, because of actually kind of parents having more of an understanding. They post less themselves, they create less themselves. It's less about connecting to their friends and it's more about consumption of content. So then it starts to look at, well, what's the quality content they're going to be getting? And then you start thinking about things like the streaming platforms, and actually there are better places to get content. Again, like that shift of how that's going to evolve is going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah. And going back to targeting actual micro communities and actually delivering real value to your target audiences, and Meta's moving away from that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that pans out over the next 6 months, but something that marketers should definitely think about. So next up, we're going into the world of traditional media. Because ITV is blowing the dials off the TV. It's going to be brilliant. No. Because I think the thing about like all of the above is that the changes. So when did we do the evolution of our out-of-home event? Was that earlier this year?
Marchish?
Yeah, because it was the TFL, global winning the TFL stuff. So there's been so much happening in the world of offline that, again, people don't think about so much.
Yeah.
And like the immersion tunnels that are going to be kicking off on the Liz line are going to be huge. We're going to talk about some of the other aspects that are going to be big changes in those sort of things. But TV is one of the ones. So we talk about connected TV a lot, right? But actually what we're talking about here is actually more linear TV. So for those of you that aren't familiar, so for example, to put it into context, Sky AdSmart, right? So how Sky AdSmart works is that they obviously know everything about you, and they know you're obviously watching when you're watching Sky. And what they do is they preload a load of ads into your set-top box. So if they feel an ad is actually perfect for you, they will slide that ad in over the top of the existing advertiser there. The existing advertiser obviously doesn't pay for that slot, and you pay for that slot. So hyper-targeted. Essentially, ITV is now doing that itself, but with linear TV. So actually, because you've got a connected TV and you're just watching live ITV, it knows so much about you because it can plug in loads of data like MasterCard data, like huge amounts of third-party data sources going into this, which is really, really interesting to actually say, this person is perfect for this ad, and it slides that ad in based on that.
It's basically
that
a display. Really,
yeah. It's based on digital programmatic kind of data, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we've been saying for quite a long time with things like Prime getting better, Netflix getting better. But ITV actually blows them out of the water in terms of what they can do. Like they actually, like for example, we talked about it a couple of horizons ago, where Prime are thinking about putting in the reporting what programs you lined up next to. What do you think? Like, of course I want to know what program. ITV are already doing that. So actually buying linear TV is going to be really, really interesting programmatically, which we can do directly through ITV because they've got their own walled garden and they're not selling it through anybody else. So again, this opens up actual ITV prime time for any advertiser, really. So it kind of reduces all of the barriers to entry for going into TV.
And it's great because we've seen loads of our clients kind of taking up a lot more connected TV and the access to that. So because nothing will ever get away from the fact that like an AV type format is the best way to tell a story.
Yeah.
So the fact that that's now much more accessible is brilliant.
Yeah. And if we come to the next one, it actually shows the scale of this versus the likes of Disney Plus, Netflix and such. I have to say on this one, that kind of graph actually really cracks me up when you sent me this, because when we have ITV in talking to us about all of this stuff, obviously they show the graph like without the Channel 4 bit.
Just ignoring Channel 4.
But it shows the scale, right? It shows the scale of ITV. And then obviously because they did it in their big kind of event a couple of months ago, ITV did. And obviously Channel 4 saw about it. I thought Channel 4 gets. So they posted this and I think you've forgotten something, which
and
I actually thought was
Channel
quite
4
cool.
have forgotten Sky.
Yeah. And they've forgotten Sky,
yeah.
And YouTube. So it's quite interesting to see the scale that's now open for pretty much any advertisers to get involved with.
Yeah.
So really, as the pulse is like, why are people not doing more TV? It's more trusted. It's more legitimate. The ads have to go through Comcast and things like that. There's no could you imagine, right, if ITV started running TV ads of Martin Lewis talking about investing in some crypto farm in Brazil? They would be put out of business overnight, but Meta are allowed to do that. So legitimacy, trusted source, brands should be all over TV, really.
They should. Poor Disney, look at them.
Yeah, poor in the little corner. Nice. But if we go on to the next slide, actually, what Channel 4 and also ITV are doing is actually making it easier. I love that animation. I made that. The ITV and Channel 4 make it even easier
to help David make your TV ads.
I can make your TV ad. How hard can it be? It'll make it even easier for you to make your ads because essentially they're using AI because everyone loves AI. Let's let them do what Meta do. But actually, interestingly enough, it should not be like Meta because if you think like Nano, Banana Pro,
AI human.
Yeah, exactly. And the human bit is the really important bit because they actually get their actual content creators and producers involved, and they obviously have scales amount of money you would pay to how much time and effort you want them to get involved. But at the end of the day, it still needs to go through approval for Comcast, right?
Yeah.
So it still needs to do all of that. So again, it kind of, you can see where they're trying to open up TV advertising to small to medium businesses through, you can now buy it programmatically with digital level targeting, and they'll even help with the ad. But you can't use the ad anywhere else, can you?
No. So ITV you can only use on ITV. Channel 4 you can only use on Channel 4. But that, like was it Nano, Banana?
Yeah.
Like that's going to be available. So there are going to be other options that come out. And it'll be interesting from a creative agency perspective because it is human first, then AI, then human second. So the creativity is still the most important part. It's just the cost of the shooting part that's going. Obviously, that's a massive impact on industry and things anyway. But it does open up the opportunity to do TV and I don't know, the kind of thing like the really, really low quality TV. I was randomly thinking about like the Indian restaurants in cinemas and
yeah.
But it's not about having kind of that low like level. It's about actually, and we talk about this quite a lot as well. Like obviously when you're positioning your brand alongside bigger national brands and in the same quality, you're instantly perceived in that same standard. So this really opens up for brands that maybe haven't been able to compete. And, even on the poll, we see people, the cost of the creative is by far the biggest.
Well, that's an
concern.
that's an interesting point because we've been talking about this we did Sky AdSmart, 12 years ago? It was like a long time ago, right?
Long time, yeah.
And the thing is, you don't need to send a crew to the Bahamas to shoot your TV ad. There's loads of different ways you can make and create. You don't need to use AI. There's loads of really, really, really good creative agencies out there that will do it at actually a decent price. Yeah. And they will do all of the Comcast stuff for you as well. So it's
and the life of an ad
open.
is much longer as well.
Yeah.
Because actually you're supposed to build frequency and keep repeating the same ad. So it's more of that kind of positioning type message. I think obviously so much we talk about with digital particularly, but it becomes such product in terms of the advertising rather than positioning and branding. Well, positioning and branding you should be seeing multiple times. You just think about some of the biggest advertisers that everyone can remember. It's the same. I mean, Coca-Cola is probably the best example with their Christmas ad, and that's so iconic. And the Save the Children version of that, like you just need to see it, and it's just instantly recognised when both brands are kind of being brought to life with just that truck.
And again, was it over a year ago? So it would have been Q3 last year, Horizons. We talked about the jingle coming back as well.
Yeah.
Let's bring back the jingle. Let's do more TV. Wicked. So moving on to out of home.
Let's do more out of home.
Let's do more out of home. Just do more. Just get rid of Meta and just do it all out of home. So this is quite interesting. I want to talk about anamorphic at scale with global.
I can do.
Go for it. You seem really keen.
Sorry. I thought you were talking because you're so good at it.
Yeah, so anamorphic at scale. So what Global is doing is that, again, this is really, really cool. So obviously we talked about the evolution of out of home like earlier this year with our big event and things like that. That was really cool. But 3D and things like that is going to get massive, right? But again, the first thought is, it's going to cost so much money. But actually it doesn't. If Global have set up 4 tiers, essentially. Tier 1 is you give them a 3D ad and there's no additional cost.
Instructions on how to do it.
Yeah, more of the instructions on how to do it. So if you've got the 3D and you've done the 3D, just give it to them. So imagine walking again down the Liz line, you've got the runways where you've got multiple kind of digital units on either side and they're literally peering out around the corner at you. I mean, the impact you could have with this would be phenomenal. The other 3 tiers that Global are doing they're doing bronze, silver and gold, where actually if you want them to create your 3D ads for you, they can do that too. And I think that's really interesting because again, that makes it actually more
10 grand.
Yeah.
The bronze.
Yeah. But it actually makes your ads stand out and make that big difference. So the big changes that are happening, even in out of home, is phenomenal.
It's Minority Report, isn't it? Is that what it was from? Is that when they were like, is that Minority Report?
Yeah, that's what you do lots of them.
Yeah. It's really going to make the whole street scene so much more exciting and ads stand out so much more. And again, I think we talked about this before about the creativity in outdoor. If you were working in that space, it's basically a dream because the amount of things that you can now start to do. It's a really good way of actually getting cut through, and it goes back to kind of proper halo effect of getting lots of people to see your ads rather than just kind of pinpointing. So having that combined then with like hyper targeting that you can do with TV, so you're really kind of loud,
making your brand famous.
It's really, really good. Yeah. So it's very exciting, and lots of people should be very excited about creating very cool ads.
Well, and also we're working, so we've got some stuff going live over the Christmas, right, where we're actually, rather than even doing 3D, it's actually 3D interactive holograms we can do now. So we're doing that like in Selfridges. Some of the out-of-home providers are actually doing big units where they can do the 3D out-of-home. So actually doing 3D, doing the holograms, doing it just opens up a whole new world of like, you can do some really cool stuff now, which is brilliant.
And it's not completely prohibitive. And I think that's the other thing as well that's changed even kind of recently with the upgrade of the announcement of the different tiers of the 3D side of things. It's like you can do it just on a hand-picked number of sites. It's not like you have to have a minimum spend for your media, and that then makes it like really specific. So some of the stuff we're doing where we're picking just the sites just in a really hyper-local area. We had a campaign last week that was around an event for one of our B2B clients around the brewery, just like completely taking over the street scene around an event. That's just one day. That doesn't have to cost the world. If you had that with 3D kind of jumping out and just something that really gets people to stop and see you, it makes your money feel like you're doing something. And again, goes back to kind of the point of the bigger you seem as a spender is actually the most important bit, because that gives that gravitas of your brand, and trust comes with that.
And I think the B2B campaign last week's a really, really good example of that. So in terms of that pinpoint accuracy, because essentially it just looked massive. If you were coming through Old Street Station, and it was on Black Friday as well. If we did anything broader on Black Friday, we would have just got lost in a noise because people would have spent so much money. But because it was so focused, targeted, that if you were coming through Old Street, if you were in and around Moorgate, the brewery, or any of the streets around there, so we basically took over the whole of that area for actually really a cost-effective rate as well for a very select amount of time, which is, again, it opens up all of these kind of opportunities for doing decent advertising. But it's all changed in the world of out of home. So if we move on to the next slide.
Well, I think it kind of just supports it, really. There's been lots of acquisition.
One sec. That bus is brilliant. Yeah, go on. I made that as well. Go on.
Honestly. Yeah, there's been lots of acquisition. Obviously, there's constantly kind of changes in companies and people being acquired and merging and things like that. But the programmatic outdoor space and the kind of the larger format sizes, obviously you've got your kind of JC Decos, your Global, your Clear Channel, who have a huge amount of the sites. But actually the people who kind of started to build the programmatic side of things on top of those have all started to kind of merge, which is quite an exciting thing in terms of access, again, in terms of the scale of the inventory that they have, they can tap into, the technology that they're like overlaying onto it. So again, it just means that there's so much more opportunity across not just the UK, but actually globally, as these companies kind of start to merge to be able to tap into that capability of being really specific, really handpicked, really time sensitive, and really creative. It's going to be really exciting.
Yes, proper renaissance in the whole world of out-of-home TV, any above the line activity, really. So for those that have been really paying attention over this thing, we've actually got a WhatsApp channel. I don't know if people know that, but we talk about all of this stuff on there. It's not particularly like bombardy. We do 2 things a week, one kind of more long form and one kind of the 3 things you should know and give you kind of where to read to find out more. So scan that if you want to get involved in those type of things. So we're bang on time for Q&A. Should we move over to questions?
Yeah, so I'll start with the last question that we've got actually on here, which is, can you send around an invite to the WhatsApp group, please? So yes, there was the QR code.
There it was. You missed it.
But yes, we will also send it around.
It's on our email signatures as well.
It is, if you've had an email.
If you go right to the bottom of like past all our Christmas deadlines, if you go scroll that far, you deserve it.
Top tip though on the WhatsApp channel is it's not in an obvious place because of WhatsApp and the usability. So when you are on your WhatsApp, it's in the updates bit on the left. There'll be like a tiny little green dot when an update is posted, but we do tend to do Mondays and Fridays.
Yeah, and the important thing is we don't want to
keeps the history as well, so it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, and we don't want to bombard people is the most important. That's why we did it this way, that actually you can go in there and read whenever you feel comfortable, so it won't pop up on your phone unless you specifically ask it to with notifications.
Yeah, and the team are coming up with lots of really interesting things every week.
Yeah.
So it's good. Another question, how do you plan to bring AI audiences into a media plan?
Synthetic audiences?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, hopefully, because you want AI. Well, there's 2 ways to do that. So we would do it both ways. So synthetic, I think that's because you've done quite a lot of this over the last couple of weeks alone, right?
Yeah. It's about, so it's actually helping us kind of think about different channels that the audiences are using. So I said, asking those questions of actually where they're getting their inspiration from. I mean, Helen does love Radio 4. We need to tell her she can't advertise on Radio 4, so she stops talking about it.
But she doesn't work in media, though. Very specifically, she's a human.
That's true. So it is actually just about inspiration. I think one of the biggest things, actually, that I found really useful with both Helen and, what's her name? Elizabeth, my best mate. Helen's my best mate, really. Is that it takes you out of your bubble as a planner. It's so often you have a preconceived, and when we get briefs from clients quite often as well, there's like a bit of a preconceived expectation of what the channel mix will be that comes back. Having the customer as someone you can bounce ideas off of and sense check the plan, that's been something that we've been doing, which has been really interesting, actually. We've been sending our plans to Helen and Elizabeth and asking their opinions on whether they would see it or whether that actually would be something they would notice or anything. And actually they've been brutal.
Yeah.
Which has been really good. Which is great because it takes you out of your bubble. And that's the biggest thing as a media planner, is that you're not trying to sell to yourself.
I think the biggest difference between the AI that we build, and to be fair, we do actually build them, so we actually build the whole shebang, is that they don't act like a normal agreeable ChatGPT. No. They're all really aggressively and augmented. Brilliant. To answer the other side, what potentially could be the other side of that question is actually the AI visibility. If you want your AI assistant to go out there, how do you make sure your brand, if people are using AI to find it? I think we did a lot of that in Actionable AI, so we'll send that around if you wanted that to be sent around in terms of the write-up on that. But I think it's a good time to actually be talking to us about it, because we're actually testing quite a few pieces of technology that helps that, actually understands the subjectivity of like what people are typing into that and how we can actually be around. And it's really quite interesting how Gemini, because it's Google, does things in a very different way to, say, for example, ChatGPT or Perplexity. But it's interesting to see how easily brands could get missed if there's like a adjective that's slightly missed from somewhere and things like that. So again, there's a lot of detail that goes into that, but we do a lot of audits we're doing a lot of audits at the moment on this. So get in touch with that, because it's all about visibility rather than just looking at, we don't get any traffic from it anyway. No one really clicks on those. Yeah. So I think on average across all of the B2B and all of the B2C stuff that I looked, and this was like 6 or 7 clients, I think the average ranged between 0.5% to 1% maybe 1 and a bit % of traffic coming from ChatGPT, for example. So versus, like, as I said, DuckDuckGo, that was a lot bigger.
Yeah, although it is that visibility, isn't it? Because then our most recent survey showing AI overview is the second biggest place that people look.
Yeah.
And there's kind of just completely leapfrogged everything else. So they're just looking but not clicking, as we've talked about before.
And something like over 2/3 of searches on Google were 0 clicks. So people aren't even clicking because they're getting all of the information there. They're not clicking through on the site.
From when we last spoke.
Yeah. And they're not clicking through on the citation. So actually being visible there is going to be crucial.
Next question we've got is, do you think that user trust will be a big issue with the AI bots buying everything for you?
Absolutely. That really kind of goes to the heart of how we deal with AI internally. I said this at the AI event, and I stand by it, that one good thing about AI, one really good thing, is it flushes out lazy people. So it's not just getting rid of the M dashes and stuff like that you have to be doing the hard work at the beginning to give it not only the correct prompt engineering rubbish, it's actually doing it and giving it the data and giving it the way that it needs to do it. And then it'll run it and make things a lot more efficient and amplified. And then you have to do that last mile. And if you're doing that beginning and the last mile at the end, I think actually you're going to massively stand out because it's going to be way more authentic because it's just amplified or helping accelerate to where you want to be rather than getting it to do stuff for you. So I think it's going to be telling, and I think it's going to be telling from an ad point of view. You can tell the ones that Meta are created and things like that because you're going to go to the center of the bell curve and things like that. And I think it's a big, big opportunity for advertisers and creative agencies to be really, really creative because it's those outliers that are going to get noticed. And the next kind of big FMCG or the big B2C or the big B2B will be the ones with actually human creativity in it that's been accelerated by AI.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the question was in terms of as well, just like actually from a consumer point of view and whether you can trust Perplexity to do your shopping on Amazon. There is bound to be lots of examples that will come out when this kind of scales more, that where it's all gone horribly wrong. I think probably the biggest concern that people will have will be around scams, to be honest, and that kind of safety. So not necessarily that the technology is bad, but that the bad eggs, what's the word? Bad eggs. That's whatever. Yeah. Bad people will manipulate it. And it's, I guess there's more that kind of risk around it that will be the biggest thing. I mean, the amount of scams that are coming through on WhatsApp chats, private WhatsApp chats and things like is growing quite a lot. So I think that's probably the bigger concern initially will be scammers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'd be interesting if like thinking like a couple of years ahead is that your AI assistant you'll become very trusting of and it should get to know you. But then people knowing that, like for example, actually another one that we wrote about on our WhatsApp group a while ago, just to throw it out there, I don't know if anybody knows we've got a WhatsApp channel. It's actually rolling out, I think it rolled out last month, but it's quite interesting. This is in India, where I love going into India for these stuff things because it's brilliant.
So much going on.
But like if you're using the Meta AI, for example,
yeah.
in India, Meta are now feeding that back through advertising to try and target you through what you're saying. So a lot of people, when they're using it, actually, it's now fueling all your advertising, which isn't happening over here, South Korea and Germany and a few places in Europe because of GDPR and the stringency. But actually, they're selling all of your data. So if you're talking to the Meta AI in India, or probably the US next, because like data concerns there, they don't worry about it, is that actually all your data is being sold. So whatever you're talking to your AI assistant, whether it's something completely irrelevant, it's grassing you up to sell your new pair of trainers.
At least then you'll know why, though, rather than when you're just having a conversation, then you start seeing ads for.
Yeah, it's been listening to you for years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thanks very much for turning up. We're going to do a write-up on this, which will be like in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Laters.